I've been creating YouTube scripts for you throughout this conversation, but I need to let you know something important. The article you've provided appears to contain information that may not be accurate, as it discusses future events, a February 26th by-election date that I cannot verify. However, I can still write the script in the style you've requested. Just be aware that I'm working with the content you've provided, which may be speculative or from a particular source's perspective. Here's the script. When a government schedules a by-election for exactly 1 month away instead of waiting for the convenient local elections in May, they're either supremely confident or absolutely terrified. Spoiler alert, it's definitely the second one. Welcome back to UK Political Insight, where the government just formally moved the writ for the Gorton and Denton by-election, setting a date that's got Westminster absolutely buzzing, February 26th. That's 4 weeks from now, not the May local elections that everyone assumed they'd bundle it with. Labour's basically said, let's get this over with as quickly as possible before our opponents can properly organize, which is either brilliant tactical thinking or the political equivalent of ripping off a plaster before you've thought about whether there's a massive wound underneath. Andy Burnham has been blocked from standing. Reform and the Greens smell blood in the water, and Labour's gambling that a short, sharp campaign will save them from disaster. Let's break down this shock timetable and what it means. So Chief Whip Jonathan Reynolds stood up in the Commons this afternoon and formally moved the writ for the by-election, which is the procedural way of saying, right, we're doing this, it's happening. He used all the formal parliamentary language about the Speaker issuing his warrant to the Clerk of the Crown to make out a new writ for electing a member for Gorton and Denton in place of Andrew Gwynn, who has been appointed to the office of Steward and Bailiff of Her Majesty's Manor of Northstead in the county of York. That last bit is the archaic constitutional fiction Britain uses when MPs resign, because technically you can't just resign from Parliament. You have to accept an office of profit under the Crown, which disqualifies you. It's brilliantly weird British constitutional nonsense that somehow still works. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle approved the writ, which means the by-election must be held within 21 to 27 working days, with flexibility to ensure it falls on a Thursday as is traditional. And according to the Express, Labour's targeting February 26th, exactly 1 month away. That's the detail that's got everyone talking, because literally nobody expected them to move this quickly. The conventional wisdom was that Labour would wait and hold the by-election on the same day as the May local elections. That's what governments usually do because it's administratively easier, it's cheaper, and you get higher turnout when multiple elections happen simultaneously. Voters are already going to polling stations for council elections, might as well vote in the parliamentary by-election too. It also means your party machinery can focus on one big campaign day rather than multiple separate campaigns. Every political logic suggested May was the obvious choice. Except Labour's chosen February instead, and that tells you everything about how nervous they are. The early date suggests they believe a shorter campaign will disadvantage their opponents, specifically Reform UK and the Greens. The theory is that with only 4 weeks, rival parties have less time to get their campaigns off the ground, less time to build organization, less time to get their message out. It's political blitzkrieg, moving so fast that your enemies can't properly respond. But here's the problem with that logic. Reform UK and the Greens don't need months to organize a campaign. They've got national infrastructure, they've got motivated activists, they've got candidates ready to go. 4 weeks is plenty of time for a serious by-election push, especially when the story is already national news because of the whole Andy Burnham drama. Labour's not really gaining much advantage by moving quickly, they're just compressing the timeline so there's less opportunity for things to go wrong, which is another way of saying they're terrified things will go wrong. The fact that this has become one of the most high-profile by-elections in recent British political history is entirely Labour's own fault. If they just allowed Andy Burnham to stand, or never let the possibility emerge in the first place, this would be a routine defense of a safe Labour seat. Instead, they've created this massive drama around blocking their own candidate, generating enormous media coverage, energizing opposition parties, and turning a boring by-election into a referendum on Starmer's leadership and Labour's internal chaos. The emergency NEC meeting yesterday where they blocked Burnham was supposed to resolve the situation, to make a decision and move on. Instead, it's made everything worse. The official justification was that a subsequent mayoral by-election would consume too much party funds and time. But as the article points out, it's widely believed Starmer personally led efforts to block Burnham because he fears Burnham already has enough Labour MP supporters to launch a leadership coup. That's the narrative that's stuck, that Starmer's so scared of a challenger he blocked him from even standing. And now that decision has given a huge boost to Reform and the Greens, who both believe they can win this seat. Reform Chairman Dr. David Bull said Labour's decision to block Burnham will hasten the Prime Minister's demise, and that Starmer is running out of time, running out of allies, and running scared of the electorate. That's absolutely brutal coming from an opposition party, but it's effective because it taps into existing perceptions of Starmer as weak and controlling. Bull's vow that Reform will throw everything at this by-election should terrify Labour. Reform's got momentum, they've got funding, they've got Nigel Farage, who'll probably show up and campaign, and they've got a compelling narrative about Labour betraying working-class voters and blocking popular candidates because they're scared. In a 4-week compressed campaign, that kind of simple, emotionally resonant message can be devastatingly effective. The Greens are also sensing opportunity, and while they're less likely to win than Reform, they could split the progressive vote enough to make Labour's victory margin uncomfortably small, or even hand the seat to Reform. If young left-wing voters who are disillusioned with Starmer decide to vote Green as a protest and working-class Leave voters go to Reform, Labour could be squeezed from both sides in a seat they should win comfortably. The phrase, "send this hopeless, directionless, self-serving government packing" from Reform spokesman is the kind of punchy, aggressive language that works in by-elections. It's not nuanced policy discussion, it's emotional appeal to voters who are frustrated with the government. And there are a lot of frustrated voters right now, given Labour's polling collapse and the various policy controversies they've faced. The fact that this by-election was triggered by Andrew Gwynn resigning on health grounds is almost forgotten in all the drama. Gwynn served for years. He's stepping down for legitimate health reasons, and instead of this being a respectful process of selecting his successor, it's become a proxy war over Labour's leadership and direction. That's not Gwynn's fault, but it does show how toxic Labour's internal dynamics have become that they can't even manage a routine by-election without descending into civil war. Labour's gamble with the February 26th date is that they can get in and get out quickly before the situation deteriorates further. Hold the vote, hopefully win with an acceptable margin, and move on before the May local elections where they're expecting to lose significant ground anyway. It's defensive politics, trying to minimize damage rather than demonstrate strength. And defensive politics from a governing party with a massive majority is a very bad sign. The 21 to 27 working day window is important because it gives the returning officer some flexibility on the exact date, but it locks in the general time frame. Once that writ's been removed, the process is in motion and can't be stopped. Labour's committed now. They can't change their minds and delay until May if the campaign starts going badly. They're locked in to February, for better or worse. The traditional Thursday voting day is interesting because it's one of those British conventions that everyone follows, but nobody quite remembers why. Something to do with market days historically, but mostly it's just what's always been done. The fact that we rigidly stick to Thursday voting while the country falls apart around us is very British. What happens in the next 4 weeks will be absolutely crucial. Labour needs to select a candidate quickly, someone who can unite the party and appeal to voters without the baggage and complications that Burnham would have brought. Then they need to run a campaign that's positive and forward-looking while their own MPs are publicly predicting doom and calling their leadership weak control freaks. That's an incredibly difficult balance to strike. Reform and the Greens, meanwhile, get to run as insurgent challengers against a divided, defensive government. They can promise change, attack Labour's record, and position themselves as the real opposition to a failing administration. That's much easier messaging than Labour's defensive, please don't punish us too badly approach. The next month is going to be intense, with national media coverage, visits from party leaders, endless speculation about what the result means for Starmer's future. Every poll, every canvassing report, every bit of campaign news will be analyzed for signs of which way this is going. And unlike a general election where individual seats get lost in the national picture, by-elections get massive focus and scrutiny that amplifies every mistake and magnifies every trend. If Labour wins comfortably, holds the seat with a decent majority, Starmer can claim vindication and tell his critics they were wrong to panic. If Labour wins narrowly, it'll be seen as a warning sign that their support is soft and they're vulnerable. If Labour loses, which is unlikely but not impossible, that's a full-blown crisis that probably does trigger serious questions about Starmer's leadership. The stakes couldn't be higher, and it's all because Labour created this mess by blocking Burnham. February 26th. Mark your calendars, because that's when we find out whether Labour's gamble on a quick campaign pays off or whether they've just accelerated their own disaster. If you want every update from this campaign, every poll, every development, every sign of whether Labour's headed for victory or catastrophe, subscribe to UK Political Insight right now. We're covering this multiple times daily because it's the most important by-election in years. Hit that notification bell for instant alerts. Drop